Newport Beach Mayor Brad Avery.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Governor Newsom, for taking the time to come down today. We had a great meeting, and it's really unifying to bring a group of very experienced people that have the levers to make things happen, to make the coast better for everyone. The people of Newport Beach love their coastline. We love the harbor. We're all water people. People in the state of California are all water people, essentially. And this is really a great example of government working, in my view. And we will prevail on this. The attention that is being brought, the amount of vessels that are going to be here, the hardware, the folks over the next couple of weeks, we're gratified to hear that, because the beaches are suffering, wildlife is suffering, and we have no more time to lose. I appreciate your comments. Thank you. Katrina Foley, sorry.
That's okay. Hi, I'm Katrina Foley. I am the Orange County Supervisor for the area that includes Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, and Seal Beach. And we are so grateful that the governor came here today to Huntington Beach, because the conversation that we had in the meeting, we really talked about authentic issues. We talked about adding more staffing to get the beaches cleaned up faster. We talked about the timing. We talked about how can we support our local businesses. We had real conversations about what can we do to prevent this from happening in the future. We also talked about how do we get more resources, and I offered that the county is here to make sure that we provide all the resources necessary in terms of staffing, in terms of support with the state and federal partners. And I just want to compliment everyone here for the very thorough dialogue that we had. I feel very optimistic that things are in good hands, and you have a lot of qualified experts here, as well as really passionate, committed leaders. So thank you all, and I'm privileged to be able to represent this area and to partner with all of you. Thank you. And I am introducing Assemblymember Tasha Horner Horvath, who is from the northern San Diego area. Oh, she's right behind me.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Supervisor Foley, for having us, and thank you for everybody for being here, and the governor for joining us. And I think I want to say something I think none of my colleagues said before. Thank you for declaring a state of emergency so we could cut red tape and make sure this cleanup is as efficient as possible. My name is Tasha Berner Horvath. I represent North County, San Diego. Everything everybody here is doing is going to ensure that the impact in San Diego is as minimal as possible. But we know the oil is heading south, and we know there's so much to do. And so this meeting that we just had was very reassuring, because we've learned lessons from previous oil spills. And so I am very confident in the command that has come together and the people standing behind me that are going to work together to ensure that there is a full cleanup. And then we have to have a real conversation about no longer hitting the snooze button on oil spills and how are we going to prevent them in the future. So thank you so much for having me here today, and I'd like to introduce my colleague from Long Beach, Assemblymember Patrick O'Donnell.
Patrick O'Donnell, State Assembly, representing Long Beach, Signal Hill, San Pedro, and Catalina Island. A lot of ocean in my assembly district. Listen, behind me is a lot of beauty, but a lot of tragedy today as well, and we're here to fix that. So I certainly want to thank the Coast Guard, the governor, for his declaration and pushing resources down to this area. I know there's been a lot of speculation as to what caused this. The ships out there going to the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. That's my district. So that's under investigation. Time will tell us why this happened, why this tragedy happened. But I can tell you one of the things we need to do is we do need to get these ships off the water. And there's three simple answers to doing that. It's going greener, quicker. That's passing Congressman Lowenthal's a bill which would charge each container a fee so that we have infrastructure to get these ships off the water quicker and back home to where they belong. And also President Biden's infrastructure plan, which will offer a lot of money to ports to help them not just have more volume, but also velocity. Again, get these ships off our water, off our coast. With that, I just want to say this is also personal to me. My kids surf in those waters. They were on their surf team, which met at Tower 22 down there a bit every morning. I know the next person I'm introducing right now is Connie Petrie Norris. I know her kids surf in those waters too. So this is not only something that needs to be dealt with on a political level, but very much a personal level too, because this is part of our culture here. These oceans are part of our culture. With that.
Thank you, Assemblymember O'Donnell. Yes, the California coast. It's 840 miles of breathtaking beauty. It's a major engine of California's economy, and it's also home to 70% of Californians. And this oil spill is really a profound and tragic reminder that this is also so fragile. We know that this spill has been devastating for our local environment, for our local economy, and for our community. I want to thank all of the first responders and everyone who's here as part of Unified Command, working tirelessly. There are hundreds of folks on the ground each and every day working tirelessly on this cleanup and to ensure that we mitigate the disaster as much as possible. And I do also want the public to know that we are also beginning the work of getting to the bottom of what caused this spill. The work of investigation and oversight and ensuring that there is accountability by the responsible party is also of paramount importance. And we will certainly, as I said, get to the bottom of this and ensure that the responsible party is held accountable for each and every dollar of this cleanup and each and every dollar of the impact it's had on our community. We also need to ensure that we are learning from this tragedy and that we're not doomed to continue to repeat these mistakes. And I really want to extend my thanks. Governor Newsom, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for declaring a state of emergency. And I think most importantly, thank you for your partnership and your leadership. Look forward to continuing to work with you as we make a clean energy future a reality for our great and beautiful state of California. With that, I am pleased to introduce my colleague, Senator Dave Min. Thank you.
Thank you, Kati. My name is Dave Min, and I have the privilege of representing the 37th Senate District, which includes the cities of Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, and Laguna Beach. And I may have some disagreement behind me, but I think I represent the best beaches in the country. But we also have some of the most important protected marine ecosystems in the state as well. So this has the potential to be devastating for us. I want to thank the governor for his leadership in coming down here, visiting, and taking this seriously, declaring a state of emergency. I also want to thank all our first responders. We had a really productive conversation in there. We're going to have 1,000+ people on the ground cleaning our beaches by the end of this week. And that's a short-term thing we're all concerned with, is mitigating this crisis right now, mitigating the environmental and economic impacts. In the longer run, we had a robust discussion in there about how we get our businesses on track. We know this is going to have an impact, potentially a very significant one, on our local economy here, which is so dependent on tourism. And we had a nice discussion about some of the options that might be available to us going forward. I know we all care about accountability as well. We need to make sure that those who are responsible for this are held accountable, and that is something that we all take very seriously. But I think potentially the most important thing, and I know everyone behind me, including the governor, shares this commitment, is that we need to make sure this is the last major oil spill that California ever experiences. And I hope that my federal colleagues and us in the state legislature can come to productive solutions on that front. But I want to thank the governor again. I want to thank everyone behind me. And I now have the privilege of introducing my colleague and friend, Senator Tom Umberg.
Well, thank you, Senator Min. Thank you for being here. 3 messages. 1, a thank you to the governor and your team for their professionalism and alacrity responding to this crisis. Message number 2, to the folks that I represent. This is our district. This is my district. To the taxpayers, the business owners, and the residents of this district, is that we're going to do everything possible to make sure you are made whole, that the damage that you experience because of this tragedy is not visited upon you without some sort of recovery. Message number 3, to the entities that are responsible for this degradation. Best that you cooperate, that you stand up, and that you assist us in making those who've been harmed whole as soon as possible. Thank you. Now it's my privilege to introduce champion of the coast, champion of the environment, and that's Congressman Ellen Lowenthal from Long Beach. Congressman?
Thank you. Taking off my mask will be longer than when I speak. I'm Alan Lowenthal. I represent, like Patrick O'Donnell, I represent Catalina, Long Beach, also Western Orange County, and Western and Northern Orange County. I too want to preface what I say by thanking all the first responders, thanking the local representatives from Orange County, the state representatives, the governor. This has been a wonderful coming together after a horrible, horrible, frightening incident. You know, I also chair the Energy and Mineral Resources Committee, Subcommittee, and the Natural Resources Committee. That is, I chair the committee that has oversight over all federal oil and gas development on federal lands. That's really what happened. We are talking about a horrible, horrible incident that occurred originally on federal lands, but it ends up on offshore. It ends up impacting state and local communities tremendously. We are going to be holding hearings on this. I will say that my colleague Mike Levin and others, I mention Mike because out of our committee for the last 5 years, we have written letters and gotten legislation out of the Energy and Minerals Subcommittee that says no more drilling of oil on the Pacific, the Atlantic, or in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. That's been our stance. We now see one of the results of when drilling occurs. When there's drilling, there will be spilling. I think we're going to be holding hearings, but I think the next step is we have to come up with a plan to not only stop new drilling, but to figure out how do we stop all drilling that's going on in California. So with that, I am honored to present my colleague, Mike Levin, who is the author of one of the major bills to stop all drilling in Southern California. Mike Levin.
Well, thank you very much, Alan. Thank you to Governor Newsom, to all of our colleagues, state and federal and local. As I saw the damage from the oil spill, as I saw oil yesterday that has the potential to foul the entire Orange County coastline, one thing was very clear to me, that the only foolproof way to end a spill like this in the future is if we ban all new offshore drilling off the coast of Southern California. So I'm leading legislation to do just that. I'm very excited to tell you that in the Build Back Better Act, the president's new bill, it's actually on page 984 of the House version. I told my friend Katie that I checked on the way over here, page 984. So now we have to get it across the finish line, and we have to do all we can to ensure that we phase out the 23 rigs that are out there now, and that we ban all new offshore rigs. And working with my colleagues in the House and Senate, that's what we're going to do. With that, I have the great honor to introduce an extraordinary colleague, somebody that, in addition to everything she does, is the chair of the Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee of the House Natural Resources Committee, my dear friend Katie Porter.
Thank you. I represent the 45th Congressional District in Orange County, and as Mike said, I chair the Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee on the House Natural Resource Committee, and we will be doing an investigation. I want to echo what my colleague, Congressman Lowenthal said, and working in partnership with him, we are going to make sure that we have answers as to how this happened and to make sure that we hold the responsible party accountable. In the meantime, I want to say how grateful I am for all of the incredible response that we've seen today and the cooperation that we have seen from local, county, state, and federal officials is really a model of how to respond to a really difficult situation like this. Like Congressman Levin, I support a ban on offshore drilling. I'm a co-sponsor of the West Coast Protection Act, and I'm with him. We must pass President Biden's agenda to end offshore drilling. It is now my pleasure to introduce Governor Newsom, who today, as he does every day, demonstrates his thoughtfulness, his commitment, his compassion to making sure that California is moving forward. Thank you very much for convening us, Governor, and for your continued leadership.
Thank you, Congressman. I was just leaning over to
Congressman Levin, I said, I've never seen 9 elected officials be so succinct in their remarks, particularly 9 remarkable leaders that have done an amazing job in the last 72 hours, but moreover, their leadership transcends just the situational challenge that we're having here today. You heard from a number of them co-sponsoring efforts to try to address the issues that bring us all together today permanently. Look, I think Cotty said it well. This is the coast of dreams, 840 extraordinary miles of coastline. There's a reason Horace Greeley in 1850 said, "Go west, young man, go west." This is a remarkable and special place. When you think of California, you're not from California, this is exactly what you think about. But this is also a stubborn reality in California that's by no means unique. The seepages that show up on the shores day in and day out, the smaller oil spills that don't bring the cameras out, but bring out calls of concern and trepidation, and then of course these larger spills that we tend to see over and over and over again. That's why I want to punctuate the point that was just made by the last 2 speakers. It's time once and for all to disabuse ourselves that this has to be part of our future. This is part of our past, and we can moralize and talk about the good old days. We can talk about how important these rigs have been to the prosperity of this country and the middle class, but at the end of the day, this is about the stale air of normalcy versus the fresh air of progress. Right now, fossil fuel jobs literally are outnumbered 5 to 1 versus clean energy jobs in the state of California. Outnumbered 5 to 1 today. This does not have to be part of our future. What you're seeing happening in this industry is a lot of the mature and larger companies are selling out to smaller companies that don't have the capacity to do the job, that don't have the capacity to make sure that these rigs are safe. You've got federal rigs out there, and yes, we recognize our responsibility, state operations that are out there. You're seeing for the first time in history, last year in California, more permits were afforded for abandonment than new drilling. That's the first time that's ever happened in state history. Now that shouldn't surprise you. In the state of California, in 1985, we had about 425 million barrels that were extracted in the state of California. Today, it's about 34% of that. We are moving to a cleaner and greener future. That process is unfolding. And what's important to note is the economy in the state of California the last 5 years is the fastest growing economy of all Western democracies as we change the way we produce and consume energy. So please don't waste our time even getting into debate around this being a choice around our economy and our freedoms and our capacity to get people moving and working. It's just nonsense. It's just not even an interesting debate in California any longer. We've moved past that debate. And so we need to now move past this incident, deal with its situation. I just want to thank the supervisor, the mayors, the incredible leadership, the local electeds as well from state assembly members and senators, and obviously the federal representatives for their sincere effort to try to address not just this moment, but to provide some accountability and transparency around these issues. Now, I know all of us are eager to know exactly what happened, when it happened, who was notified, and when, and that's part of the investigation. We just had a long meeting. We worked through some of those issues, all of us asking each other to work through those issues, and in due course, and we are putting pressure because we recognize the need to be more transparent. We're putting pressure on all of us to get that information to you immediately, including just this basic information. How many gallons were spilled? How many barrels? We know the peak number. You've written about it, and some of you said it 144,000. Others have written about 131. Some have it 126. That's all within a margin of the worst case scenario. That's basically all the volume that was in the pipe. Now, I don't want to get into the merits or demerits of the worst case scenario except to say I think it's going to be a lot better than that, but it doesn't matter to the folks out here that can't go to the beach. It doesn't matter to the mayor. It doesn't matter to the county supervisor. It doesn't matter to those small businessmen and women that can't, that aren't generating revenue. Tourists that can't come out to their beach. And as the Admiral was saying to all of us, nor does it necessarily matter as it relates to the cleanup, because it's just a question of volume. You still have the spread, even if it's substantially less gallons that have to be cleaned up, just maybe a little less volume that you scrape up in that moment. So this is going to take time to clean up.
we're already going back. Look at what happened in 2015 and the 140 plus-ish thousand, plus or minus, thousand gallons that spilled nearby, the Refugio oil spill. Took about 3.5 months total in that spill, total, to clean it all up. Now, that was a different spill. Remember, that occurred onshore going offshore. And that hit a different topography as it relates to the beach, more rock, which makes it a little more challenging to clean up than the sand. That said, we've got some contemporary experience here that allows to guide us in a direction where we do believe we could start answering questions, the questions all of you have. When can I go back on my beach? When can I go back out on my boat? When can I go back out and whale watch? When can we go back to lobster season? Big deal down here in Southern California. And so those questions will be not only answered, but the answers will be afforded over the course of the next days and weeks. And I assure you we'll stay on top of this. I want to thank our team led by the Office of Emergency Services, our incredible leadership, Department of Wildlife, Fish and Wildlife, and the good work that Jennifer Lucchese at State Lands is doing. As you know, the pipeline that has now been breached was due for another inspection. Every 2 years it's inspected. You have an internal inspection, you have an external inspection, the external being divers, the internal being cameras and technology. Last time it was done internally, the investigation was in 2019, October 29th. Last time we did the external was in April of last year. It was due for its second inspection, internal inspection, at the end of this month. Now, that all may be academic. There was no issues. Now we're going back to the details of those reports, but there's no issues cited in those reports when they were last inspected. But it may be academic if indeed this turns out to have been a cause that some have speculated as it relates to the cause that is now internationally identified as a supply chain challenge that obviously we're experiencing disproportionately here when we have 40+% of the world's goods movement coming out of the LA and Long Beach ports. So across the spectrum, this is a moment to remind all of us that this does not have to be our future. And if there's anything I'm more resolved at this moment, especially after the last 2 fire seasons, is to recognize that our responsibility, even though we are the tentpole of environmental stewardship, arguably, and climate policy in this country, and arguably around the rest of the world, that we still have to do more. We're going to have to do more. We're doing that on fracking now. We've got to do that in more oversight. We've got to do that on more permits for abandonment, less permits for reworking and for new drilling. We recognize our obligations in that space. Health and safety setbacks, all of those things, I assure you, are on the table and very much part of the conversation we're having with renewed sense of urgency because of this latest spill. Final words. I want to thank the 300 folks that are out there cleaning up right now on the beaches. In anticipation, we have roughly 1,500 folks that we think will be out here tomorrow. Now, I know many of you want to get out and get to work. I know many of you are calling in, how do I volunteer? I know the supervisor is getting overwhelmed with that. We want to make sure, we want to do that through our instant command, so we want to make sure we coordinate all the volunteers. If you're interested, it's a 4-hour training. We don't want you just going out there and, you know, your flip-flops. It's a 4-hour training. It used to be a 16-hour training. We learned some lessons from Refugio. Now it's a 4-hour training. If you want to do that, we'll go through the incident command and we'll provide that number for you when we are prepared for the volume of phone calls. But I want folks to know we're grateful because you care. This matters to you. It's personal. It's about your memories. It's about your lifestyle. That's what climate change is about. And we could talk about low carbon green growth and MO2s under 2 and COP 26 and the 6th. I mean, no one understands a damn word we're saying. I mean, they just don't. Is it Celsius? What's Celsius? Military understands that. Most of us don't. You know, but lifestyle, we understand. 2 towns in California that were eliminated from the map this year because of wildfires, that we understand. We understand 8 degrees Fahrenheit, that our kids likely be living in a world that's 8 degrees on average Fahrenheit, higher temperatures. We understand extremes, not just extreme heat, but extreme weather, east to west. Well, you know why? Those damn platforms, fossil fuels. It's not very complicated. So we need to grow up, grow out of this dependency and this mindset that we can't do more and do better. What is clean energy? It's about innovation. It's about entrepreneurialism. It's about dominating the future. It's about jobs. It's about transforming our economy. It's about future-proofing America and California. It's about protecting this coast and other coasts of dreams around the rest of the world for generations. My gosh, let's capture that opportunity. Let's capture this moment in Congress. Let's move forward with the agenda the Biden administration has put forward. Let us own up to our own responsibilities, yes, the state included, to do more and do better, but also let's recognize the opportunity that this moment provides as well. In optimism, I say all of that, but also sober that this tragedy did not need to occur and does not need to persist into the future. With that, all of us are here to answer any questions you may have.
Governor, you heard Congressman Levin talk about the only foolproof way of stopping this is to ban all drilling. How much of a reality is that?
Well, banning new drilling is not complicated. That's prospective. I mean, we've been battling the Trump administration on that in the past. We don't have the headwinds. Now we have tailwinds with the Biden administration. But there hasn't been a new offshore lease here in half a century. 50s and 60s, that's when you started to see these platforms. There hasn't been a new one in over 50 years. There won't be. In fact, we made that clear. Even if the Trump administration came in and wanted new permits, they'll have no place to put the infrastructure because we will not allow for the permits to allow that infrastructure to go onshore or even offshore in our jurisdiction. So that's not going to happen, but let's protect that so we don't have to have these debates any longer by codifying their legislative efforts. The deeper question is, how do you transition out and still respect the workforce that, by the way, right now, folks that are out there, engineers and folks who are working those lines, are also working on the abandonment, on the capping of these wells as well. I mean, there's sort of an immediacy and opportunity in terms of that transition. The state of California just put up almost $750 million to help with the workforce transition. But we have to map that out, I think, with more clarity and more nuance. It's not just platitudes. People are naturally and understandably anxious about their future, and communities that are disproportionately reliant on those extraction policies. So that's what we're putting forward, and I'm confident that California can show its leadership and example in that space. Yeah.
I just want to make sure too that people are aware that this leak occurred on federal waters and the lease was under the management of the Federal Department of Interior. So just for awareness, the governor is talking about the fact that it's been 50 years since California authorized any drilling on its waters. But what we're fighting for at the federal level is to make sure that that ban goes into effect for federal lands and federal offshore drilling. That's unfortunately where this leak occurred.
Yeah. Now, important clarification, but I just want to reinforce, you think you're going to get a new permit to come in and put the oil, it's not going to happen. I'm just telling you. But we need that legislation. I don't want to deny that legislation, but I want the Trump administration, folks, all those folks out there, there's still all those Republicans out there still think the answer to every problem is more offshore oil drilling, to just know, not in our backyard, won't happen.
When you guys were in the briefing, there was some talk about ensuring that the people know, because there was some confusion, I think maybe yesterday, that the responsible party is not part of the investigation.
Yeah, 100% unequivocally not part of the investigation. The responsible party is not part of this investigation. Now, they're a party to the investigation. By definition, their information, insight, and accountability will be part of the investigation. But no, they're not driving it in any way, shape, or form. Thanks for asking that.
Amplify and its subsidiaries have had over 100 reports of violations. What do you make of that, and who is ultimately responsible for what happened?
Well, again, the issue of responsibility and accountability will be part of the investigation and process. As it relates to this incident specifically, As it relates more broadly to the issue of an operation of an offshore oil platform under federal jurisdiction in federal waters, it's pretty clear that where that responsibility lies. That said, components of that responsibility cascade. As you go farther off the coast, inland, gets into state lands, and then into local jurisdiction. This pipe, for example, is has federal jurisdiction, state jurisdiction, and local jurisdiction. There's some complexity, and that's why I think you asked the question. And so nuancing that and expressing as it relates to those violations, where that accountability lies, is a more nuanced response than I can provide at this moment, but we're happy to follow up with you.
Should more have been done sooner with a company that has so many repeated violations?
I mean, across the board, that will be determined. But again, if this turns out to be an accident as it relates or some other, we'll make a determination of what responsibility may be. Then that's a little bit of a different question as it relates to more situation than what just occurred.
Governor, while this relates to federal jurisdiction, drilling this occurring in federal jurisdiction, do you believe the state needs to be more aggressive in ending existing offshore drilling permits and eventually decommissioning wells? And if so, what do you plan to do to make that happen?
Well, I was chair of the State Lands Commission that actually shut down 2 offshore platforms. I'm very proud. We're doing it. We did quick claim on Holly and Rincon Island. In fact, I think over 88 million barrels is in the ground permanently. So we're doing it. Now, at what pace? Not the pace that I know a lot of people, trust me, that a lot of people want. I get it. But I really think this is important, and forgive me, guys. I don't know how many of you drove today. Maybe you all walked or biked. I don't know how many of you have been in a plane in the last few years, but society becomes how we behave as well. And so it's not just a supply issue, it's a demand issue. And we've got to radically change demand. That's how you ultimately address this issue, and your answer to the question is determined on that basis. That's why California was the first state in America to say that we're not going to sell any more gas guzzling cars. In fact, no internal combustion engines will be sold in the state of California by 2035. That was a year and a half ago. People thought we were on the extreme. Now, you saw weeks later, Ford and GM and others say, you know what? We like where California's going. We're going to skate to where the puck's going. And now jurisdictions around the world. Why does that matter? California, half of the emissions in the state of California come from the tailpipe or extraction related to automobiles. That's a game changer for this state. You change demand, by definition, the supply dynamics radically change. So we could continue to accelerate the transition. Demonstrably, we're doing that. Look at the peak numbers, 425 million barrels in 1985, 34% of that today. We have more work to do in that space, more abandonment permits in 2020. First governor in history can say this. There were more abandonment permits in 2020 than were permits for new oil operations. And by the way, 5 times more so far this year. So we're starting to do it at a pace that not everybody's satisfied with, but at a pace that no other state, oil-producing state in America is.
Final question. There was a report issued earlier today with preliminary findings from the investigation as to what happened with the pipeline that said it was multiple hours after the rig detected a loss of pressure in the pipeline before they contacted officials. Do you think that the notification system for officials to start getting out and dealing with spills needs to be overhauled to help account for that?
We were having this exact conversation. We were all asking each other that question. That's exactly what the investigation is going to determine. And as soon, and I know your need to, I mean, what I want to avoid is everybody speculating, running 300 different directions, everybody pointing fingers. Trust me when I say this, particularly on the notification, I hear it loudly and clearly. Public, internal notifications, federal partners, state partners, across the spectrum. As soon as we get that information, we will provide that to you. We will do everything up. We will drive that investigation. We'll hold ourselves to account to get that information to you in a timely manner, but the investigation needs to proceed objectively.
Thanks, everyone. We asked the president for a federal disaster report.
Yeah, look, we talked about this, and I really appreciate the leaders behind me saying we need more support for small business. We're looking to work with the SBA to get small business loans to help our small businesses. Obviously, once the cleanup takes place, there'll be a monitoring process where we'll be monitoring things, and we want to figure out how to open up the beach. At the same time, we're still monitoring to help with the tourism components. Obviously, commercial fishermen want to know when they can get through, and we're going to work through all those issues in real time. We're going to try to be creative as it relates to the declarations, the proclamations, and the sources of funds, et cetera. As it relates to the next iteration, we did the declaration of emergency. It reached that threshold. When the conditions are such that we can reach that net threshold, sadly, we've become experts on this with all these wildfires, we will pursue those declarations. But at this moment, the declaration we put out yesterday was as far as we feel we can go directly with the president. But one of the great things about this president is he has an open hand, not a closed fist when it comes to the state of California, and I'm confident of his support in terms of the direction that we pursue. Thank you all very, very much for your time.
Sorry, so sorry.
You were just Saturday. Okay.